On Sunday, Jamaica thought it had its 21st sprinter. Well, on Sunday, Jamaica had its 21st sprinter, breaking the 10-second barrier. But World Athletics has recognized Akim Blake's 9.92 seconds run in Nashville as a disqualification. The reason for the disqualification is unclear at this time. Disqualification aside, the 20-year-old has been in good form this season and is among a young brigade of Jamaican male sprinters who will be hoping to end the country's 5-year wait for a global championship medal in the 100 meters. It may not seem that long ago, but given the country's dominance of the event from 2008 to 2016, you can forgive fans for mourning about current realities. Their lamentations can be better understood if one considers that the last time a Jamaican not named Usain Bolt managed to win a medal in a global 100 meters event was 2013. And since Bolt's retirement in 2017, Johan Blake is the only Jamaican to even get to a global men's 100 meters final, doing so at the 2019 World Championships. Blake then failed to earn a lane in the Olympic final last year in Tokyo. That made it the first time since Sydney 2000 that no Jamaican faced the starter in the blue ribbon event among the men. But the lean spell may be drawing to an end given the quality of the talent that has emerged since the start of the year. 2 Jamaicans are already under 10 seconds this year. Oblique Seville 9.86 and the injured Davionte Burnett at 9.99. Akim Blake would have been the third if not for his disqualification at 9.92. Those 3 athletes are under 23 years of age. Then there's 32-year-old Johan Blake, who's run 10.05. Also in the top 5 is 19-year-old Conroy Jones, who has run 10.14. So the question is, Jamaica's male sprinting again on the rise? Who better to speak to us about this than our track and field expert, Leighton Levy? Good afternoon, Leighton.
Hey, George. Long time.
Yeah, long time indeed. I know you would have been working and we would have disturbed your work because you would have been seeking to find out why Akim Blake's time on Sunday in Nashville, Tennessee is not what we all thought it was, 9.92, a legitimate sub-10.
But what happened, I think, is that prior to the start of the 100, well, during the start of the 100, there was an incident where the starter held the athletes a little bit too long, and Akim Blake was one of 2 athletes who stumbled out of the blocks. And then eventually happened that they were given the green card, suggesting that they were still within the boundaries of the law and allowed to compete in the finals. Of course, he ran the final he ran 10.08, equaling his previous best, and still is actually, because 9.92 has now been disqualified. But then came back and ran 9.92 in the finals, which would have made him the third Jamaican under 10 seconds this year. So that's the reason why the 9.92 is now listed as a disqualification. I understand that all the results from that meet on Sunday in Nashville are under review, because I was also told on Sunday that the 400-meter hurdles, 51.61 by Sidney McLaughlin, the hurdles weren't placed correctly as well, so that's also under review. I was trying to get to Paul Doyle to find out if the review has been complete, but up to this point, he hasn't responded to my message yet. So maybe the 9.92 might be overturned. We're not sure. But as of right now, it's a disqualification. But time was still run. And it's very encouraging, given the progress that we've seen from him so far this season, along with Conroy Jones, who during the early parts of the season was running 10.3s and 10.4s. That 10.14 is a significant improvement on what he's been running so far this season. As you mentioned, he's still 19. Of course, Oblique Seville, 9.86. And encouragingly, the star-crossed, ill-fated, unlucky Kemar Bailey Cole seems to be on his way back. 10.18 on Saturday at Jamaica College, looking well within himself. I'm very keen to see what he does in 3 weeks at the National Championship. So obviously, it seems as if Jamaica's male sprinting is on the rise again. I thought it would have taken a little bit longer, but very pleased to admit that I was wrong.
I'm toying with asking you a question that, but I don't want to provoke more people, because I would have asked you, given the problems you cited at that Nashville meet about hurdles not being put in the right place and people twitching, falling out of blocks and disqualification. And I've asked you if a certain federation had organized the meet, but I'll just leave. I won't go stronger than that. But you both of you know what I'm talking about, and the viewers, if they're keyed in, will know as well. But here's the thing, Leighton. You say the cycle is coming around perhaps quicker than you thought. The obvious question to ask is, when you look at what Jamaica has done among the women since, if you go back to, I say Athens, forward, Athens 2004 forward, cycle after cycle, Leighton, Donald, generation after, well, not generation after generation, because a generation is over a period of years, but cycle after cycle, multiple generations since 2004. Why, Leighton Levy, have the men been left behind?
I think a couple of reasons. I think when you look at, to go back to your point, from 2004, we saw Veronica Campbell transition to, of course, there was also Karen Stewart, Sharon Simpson, of course, Gillian Fraser-Price. You know, the line, the conveyor belt seems to be a lot more consistent, primarily because I think women tend to be a little bit more focused than the men are. I think, especially in the era of Asafa Paul and Usain Bolt, when all of that affluence was being flashed around the place, not necessarily deliberately, but it was there for all to see. I think a lot of our young men got distracted by the material side of things as opposed to what is required to get there. And I think along the way, we've seen so many athletes, young athletes signed, who have fallen off, primarily because I think they were distracted by what they were earning without accomplishing anything. And then they paid the price for it. You know, there are so many, I won't call any specific names because I don't want to let people feel that I was targeting any particular individual, but there are a number of young athletes signed contracts right out of high school, earning money that they probably would have only dreamed of in years prior, and who spent a lot of their time amassing vehicles and partying and doing all of the stuff that they should not be doing at that stage, as opposed to preparing for, you know, the highest level of competition. And I think the distractions there perhaps cost them, as opposed to the women who tend to be a little bit more focused on what the task is, what the goal is, and what the goals are. And then it tends to, you know, they tend to come through a lot more quickly. The other thing is, I think that for the large part, a lot of Jamaican fans especially, only believe that Jamaican track and field is successful when our male sprinters do well. But as you pointed out, George, our women have been doing well since Merlin Ottey won Jamaica's first Olympic medal for women in 1980 in Moscow. The women have generally been more consistent in terms of generating medals right through. I did some research just before the Olympics last year, and the Jamaican men had a head start of about 12 medals between 1948 and 1980, when Jamaica women won their first Olympic medal, our first global medal, I should say, because the World Championships came along in '83, 3 years later after Merlin Ottey's bronze medal in 1980. But since that time, our women have out-earned the men in terms of medal hauls. And if you take the aberration of Usain Bolt out of it, the difference is a lot more stark.
Leighton, you mentioned the mindset of our youngsters, right? And it's interesting to note that Akim Blake is a rural boy from Merlin Ottey. Yep. Mm-hmm. Are you surprised by his transition so quickly under Michael Frater, who, mind you, would have been under the tutelage of Stephen Francis initially, and then, of course, in his latter years sprinting, Glenn Mills?
Yes and no, because one of the things that I've come to discover is that sometimes the talent comes from unexpected places. And the first time I saw him run, well, since season at the National Stadium, the time wasn't particularly impressive, but you saw little flashes of what was possible if he ran a cleaner race. And each week, when he came back to compete, you saw those additional pieces coming together. So, and then when he ran that 10.08, remember he beat Johan Blake in that race as well. Mm-hmm. He looked close to what we would probably consider the finished article, but he's nowhere close right now. Michael Frater told me on the weekend that he expected him to run 98 in Nashville on the weekend. So the 992 is close, but he still has pieces of his race to come together. So yes, I was surprised at the progress that he's made so far this season, but having seen him, not really surprised at where he's at now.
I want to expand on something for me in terms of Michael Frater and what he's going to be bringing to the table of not just Blake, but I believe Bailey Cole as well, who's with him, and the others. What are your thoughts on him, and what do you expect from him as a coach?
I think Michael Frater he's a very quiet individual, but he's a really smart guy. He's very savvy, and he understands the elements of coaching better than a lot of people who are established coaches. Working with Gregory Little, who is also a very underrated coach because they walk very quietly, but they let their athletes speak for them. I think together they make a very formidable team in terms of coaching. When you look at what they've been able to bring Johan Blake back to, when you look at what they've been able to rescue Kamara Bailey Cole, bringing him back to 10-1-8 on the weekend, and what they've done with Akim Blake so far, you can see that there's a lot of coaching acumen there that I think will benefit a lot of Jamaican athletes going forward.
All right, so we've been talking about Akim Blake. We've spoken a lot on this show about the fast man, Oblique Seville. For those who don't know, Leighton, what about Davionte Burnett?
Davionte Burnett, of course, at USC, is under the tutelage of Carmelita Jeter. I think he has a lot of potential. He's picked up an injury so far this season. We saw flashes of it last year. 999 suggests that there is more in the tank, but there's still a lot that is not known about where his talent level truly lies. Because I don't think we've seen the best of him yet. I mean, he ran in the NCAAs last year in the finals, and I think he came fifth in what was a pretty quick race. He's mentally strong based on what I've seen so far. In terms of what he's able to do physically, I think we're still some ways as to figuring out just how fast he can go. But I do believe that what we've seen from him, he'd make a really good relay runner right now, because what we're seeing here as well is that individually we might not be at the level where we're contending for medals just yet. Even with Oblique Seville's 986, what we don't know is how he will compete against the world's best round after round after round and going to a final and bringing his best. So that's yet to be tested. We saw evidence of his mental toughness at the Olympics last year. He just failed to make the final in Tokyo. This year, when he's an established sub-10 man, 986, second fastest in the world this year, what that means when he goes to Oregon in the summer. But when you look at what his potential is, George, I think we are likely to see something closer to 9.7, maybe by the end of the season or early next year in terms of what he's able to produce. I think he's probably right now our most talented young sprinter.
Yeah, well, not many people would disagree with you on that. The fact is, though, you spoke about levels of maturity and ability to handle material gain, and you cited that as a possible countervailing factor where the progress of Jamaica's young men are concerned. And I want to contrast that with somebody like Brianna Williams, who has also gotten the attention of corporate Jamaica and big sponsors elsewhere, and you can't find a more focused young woman. Is it a case, Leighton, where those handling these potentially good male sprinters, the young ones, ought to exert more control over how they expose them on the commercial side, for fear that allowing them to experience too much too soon will make them uncoachable in many respects and will blight rather than boost their prospects?
Absolutely, George. When you look at the fact that, if you look at, you mentioned Brianna Williams, and when you look at the team that she's assembled around her, it's a team that is experienced. Her agent is a man who has negotiated deals for some of the best athletes in the world for Nike. Otto Bolden, who himself was a former world-class athlete, who's still a young coach, but a very mature young coach. We look at Tanya Lee, who is managing her affairs. She's surrounded by people who understand the business of what is required of her. And they keep her in check, because don't get it twisted, Brianna does require some amount of management because she's a youngster and she wants to do the party. She wants to have the fun that youngsters of her age, desire. But they keep her in check. They have her, they give her some amount of room on a leash, but they understand what is required for her to be consistently good. So they keep her on a tight enough rein so that she does not run afoul of, the expectations that not the fans, but certainly her management and the people who sponsor her expect.
Yeah.
So, it's what we see that I think is lacking among some of our male athletes who they don't have the team together. And the people who are surrounding them are not necessarily people who have that kind of experience or acumen that will be able to have them under that kind of control that allows them to remain focused and be at their very best.
Yeah. I say this before we go, Leighton. When you look at Seville, you look at Burnett, you look at Blake, you look at Jones, yeah? When you look at those guys, do you think that if they have the luck with injuries, which is significant in the context of things, do you think that Jamaicans will have cause to watch the Global 100 meters finals with keen interest rather than just passing interest because you're going to have someone at the top of the straight at the starting blocks?
It's very possible. Given what we've seen so far this year, we know how Glenn Mills works. And then we see Oblique Seville running 986 2 weeks ago, or 2 or 3 weeks ago. It's very possible that he's going to be able to run a lot faster at the right times. And based on the times that we've seen so far this year, he's right within that wheelhouse of the possibility of ending up on the podium if he manages to get to a final and executes the way Glenn Mills would expect him to. Of course, that's a lot of expectation on a young man who is only 21 years old. The fact is, however, you have to prove yourself in the field of battle. And I think based on what we see from Oblique Seville, he won at champs under extreme pressure. Because you know what that expectation is, George, at the national Boys and Girls Championships every year. I think under the guidance of Glenn Mills, I think if he comes to the national championships at the end of this month and produces a 9.80 or 9.7 something, he will go into the World Championships very confident and will possibly take on and rattle the Americans or the Europeans and possibly end up on the podium.
Or the Italian,
yeah. Because look, if he ran 986 a couple of weeks ago, it means that he probably ran that time with a lot of load on his legs. As he tapers towards the business end of the season, it is very possible he could go a lot faster. 9.7s in this current era, the post-Bolt era, could very well see him winning a world title.
Yeah, well, Dennis Brown sang about the formula many years ago. Dancehall had its formula song, Alkaline had it. It seems as if Glenn Mills has found the formula once again, and with that, Jamaica's absence from the medal party where the men's short sprint is concerned. Leighton Levy is saying that in the form of Oblique Seville, who's at the point of that spearhead, and men like Akim Blake and Burnett and a few others, the veteran Johan Blake not far off at good shape, Kimara Bailey Cole rounding back into good form. The man is saying that the cavalry is set to re-emerge and roll out. I hope you're right, Leighton. We all hope you're right.
I hope so too. And of course, the relay, I think we haven't been on the relay podium for a while as well. Having owned the world record, the only team under 37 seconds, 36.84, you have to believe that with the talent that is emerging right now, we can put together 4 of the best of the lot that we just mentioned. A relay medal is also possible in Oregon as well. There's a lot of promise that's being shown right now, and if they just manage to keep those elements together and keep them healthy, good things are possible.
Yeah. So that I can do without seeing 4 Chinese men with personal best of 10.1 thing coming together to get a medal. Yeah, there you go. All right, thank you very much, Leighton. All the best to you.
Take it easy, guys.
Good. We take a break. Back with more.
Want more content? Follow us on YouTube, subscribe to SportsMax on cable, and download the SportsMax app today.